How would 19th century guitarists and musicians teach you to play their music? That's a question that I like to ask myself, and I try and find some answers in method books of the 19th century, which can help to inform us about our interpretation and the decisions that we make with regards to dynamics and tone color, as well as many other topics. Today I want to focus on Saw's Etudes 13 and 14, and specifically on the topic of tone color. Now, in the 19th century, it seems pretty clear that guitarists thought of tone color and dynamics as a sort of united thing. So when you play loud, the right hand would be playing closer to the bridge, and when you play soft, the right hand would be playing closer to the fretboard. Modern guitarists often keep their hand in one position and change dynamics from there, which is the opposite of what 19th century guitarists were writing. Carulli wrote that the right hand does not have a fixed position because of the extent that you want to sweeten the sounds to imitate the harp, and to do so you have to bring it closer to the sound hole. When you want to play loud, you have to bring the hand closer to the bridge. So that's just one example of uniting of tone and dynamics. So Saw Etude 13, it's in sixths and it's in D minor. D minor is already giving us a clue as to the mood and character of this etude, and this can help us to gauge our level of dynamics and the way that we color the music. So I just want to read you what 19th century theorists wrote about D minor. So one wrote, D minor expresses a subdued feeling of melancholy, grief, anxiety, and solemnity. And another wrote, a pensive key full of nobility and refined feeling. Later on in this etude, the piece modulates to F major, and 19th century composers used tonality as a way of creating contrasts, sometimes large contrasts, within one piece of music. So let's see what 19th century theorists had to say about F major. F major, full of peace and joy, but also expresses effectively a light, passing regret, a mournful but not a deeply sorrowful feeling, available for the expression of religious sentiment. And another wrote a much shorter quote, clear and simple, free from all bitterness and melancholy. I think those quotes describe this etude quite well for both D minor and F major sections. It at least offers us a good starting point for the spirit and character and mood of this etude. So, as I said, Saw Etude 13 is in D minor, and it focuses on the interval of a sixth. And later on, you're going to learn scales in thirds, sixths, octaves, and tenths. And you're going to find that 19th century guitarists were using these a lot in their pieces. So if you learn these scales in at least some keys, it's going to make learning these pieces a lot faster, and it's going to make sight reading these pieces a lot faster too. So one clue we can use to determine our shaping, our dynamic shaping, and thus our shaping of the color, is the melodic line and the shape of the melodic line. Aguado writes that it is necessary to bear in mind the sense of the notes in each melody of the phrase. While they rise, the sound gradually is intensified and tends to decrease when they fall. So in the first measure alone, we already have some falling and rising and falling again. So we start on the D, we fall down to the C sharp, up, and back down, and then we land back on the D. So I like to use Pratton's example D somewhere around the fretboard. I'm plucking around the fretboard area. For me, this is a sort of personal thing. You can change You can use whatever color you like, but I think it matches the chords of D minor. And Segovia's edition does say with calm, con calma, and I think that color can reflect that quite well. So the first measure, we have that melodic shape. The second measure is basically a repeat of the first measure. So this can be an opportunity for us to create some variety. And Shoney writes that in general, every repeated passage should be played the second time with a different style of expression from that which was given to it the first time. So I like to color the second measure differently and use a different color and thus a different dynamic. Segovia, in his edition, writes a crescendo mark going into the second measure, and I think that's a good move. The line is basically rising towards the third measure overall, so this gradual intensification of sound I think works really well. And I think in order to make that even clearer, a hand can start at example D in the first measure, and then move to example C, then example B for the third measure, so from there the line continues to fall. So a hand has been moving for the first three measures, starting at the fretboard and moving down towards the bridge. Now it's going to basically just do the opposite and move from the bridge up back towards the fretboard to get softer. So I'm going to play from the fourth measure now, starting in example B, and watch as my hand will move back up to the fretboard. Except that I tricked you there, and I did go Ponticello for that repetition of a phrase. Again, it's not an exact repetition, but I think it's enough of an opportunity for us to give some variety in the sound. Source Etude 14 is a very contrasting etude to number 13. 13 was in D minor, and basically had this one texture, which was quite transparent. You just have those sixths on the top and a bass line on the bottom. Source Etude 14 is in A major, very contrasting character. And the texture is a bit more dense, a bit more complex, we could say. So A major, let's just read the chords that theorists were talking about for A major. So this key includes declarations of innocent love, satisfaction with one's state of affairs, hope of seeing one's beloved again when parting, youthful cheerfulness, and trust in God. The second chord says, full of confidence and hope, radiant with love and redolent of simple, genuine cheerfulness, excels all the other keys in portraying sincerity of feeling. Almost every composer of note has breathed his sincerest and sweetest thoughts in that favorite key. I think these quotes almost perfectly embody this study, or the study embodies those quotes. They're really a great match. I think with this study, we have something a little bit different in terms of the shaping and the color to Etude 13. So we have this line, this melodic line on the top, which moves moves quite slowly, and then we have a sort of an accompaniment to that. So I think it's important that we shape each part individually before we put them together and shape them as a whole. So again, we're just going to use the pretty straightforward ideas of when the line rises, we crescendo, and we might bring our hand a little bit closer to the bridge. Although in this case, I feel like with this melody, it is sort of one unified idea a little bit more. So perhaps you don't need to change the color as much when the line is rising and falling. So I'll play it again and I'll just talk through it. So we're starting on A. The A repeats. So a repetition is a opportunity for a little bit of a crescendo, a little bit of direction towards something. So we rise up to C, so that's a chance for a bit of a crescendo, and then it falls back to A, and then it falls and rises back up to A. So maybe I'll just play it and I won't speak about it. So I'm kind of changing my color there towards the end. I'm sort of playing the first part with example C, and then so you can use any sort of combinations you like, but that's what I kind of prefer to do. So now for the inner parts, the accompaniment part, which is basically a part in thirds. So knowing your scale in thirds will be helpful. Later on we'll go through that. So let's play this part and then I'll talk about it. So I'm just going to play the accompaniment part on its own. So this one is a little bit more shapely on a small scale, and the trick and the difficulty and the challenge of this etude, I think, is shaping that melodic line, which has its sort of broad shape, and also shaping the accompaniment part, which has a much sort of smaller scale shaping to it. So again, you just follow the line, and again, repetitions are a chance to sort of push and give some direction and some dynamics, and I'll be giving you quotes about that later on. So when you put those two together, I'm going to do my best. So obviously there's a lot of work involved there, but I think the more that you just keep separating the parts and finding the color and dynamic and spirit and character of each one and then putting them together, I think after some time you'll discover some whole new dimensions. And this is the ideas behind this are quite straightforward, but when you actually apply it to the music, it works very well. And there is opportunity to put your own interpretation within those boundaries.